That's Station
Yeah.
95.7. Good morning. It's Chris Edge. My guest this morning from Blitzen Trapper frontman Eric Early. Eric, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
20 years, 2 decades of making music. That's pretty amazing. Does it feel like it's been that long? 2 decades?
Yeah, it kind of does.
It does?
Yeah.
In what ways?
Well, it's been a decade of touring,
Yeah.
and then it was another decade of just screwing off and playing music and getting loaded. Maybe it feels more like 10 years.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about the new album, Holy Smokes and Future Jokes. We're playing the new single, Don't Let Me. But the album's got this theme, right? This theme about cosmic humility. What is cosmic humility?
I think that, yeah, sort of like the broader theme. I mean, most of the songs are based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead in various ways.
Right.
And to me, that the ideas in that book sort of speak to this idea of humanity being sort of ethereal and not really the center of the universe like we like to think ourselves.
Okay.
To me, it has to do with man understanding his place and allowing himself to let go of all the things that he needs to let go of in order to sort of achieve that kind of humility.
Okay. And is that idea connected to this transitional state between death and rebirth? I mean, is the album about cosmic humility, or is it about this transition that you've talked about?
It's both. The transition has everything to do with like detachment, really. I was sort of fascinated by the bardo and this intermediate state because it was a place where you could choose to let go of all these things that we as humans feel are important or
Right.
or identify us, make our identities what they are or whatever. And there you have to let go of that in order to be freed. And so to me, that was really sort of the resonating feature of that book. And I think that's what kind of made it into the songs in a lot of ways. Most of the songs are really just sort of stories, though, in a certain sense.
So when you sat down to write the album or write music, you weren't writing necessarily to support that idea. That idea sort of just came out from what you wrote?
I think so, yeah. Because I started writing, and I had been reading this a kind of handful of books, and they sort of all sort of pointed in this direction. And so the stories and the sort of just the lyrical content.
Right.
And I think maybe even the music too. It has this sort of like intimate, quieter kind of feeling to it that to me lends itself to that kind of like lyrical content.
Right. Let's talk about one of the songs, Dead Billie Jean. This is actually a song about the character Billie Jean in the Michael Jackson song.
It's about the actual person that the character was based on. Yeah. So there was a woman who was obsessed with Michael in the 80s. She was convinced, she obviously had mental health stuff going on. She was convinced that one of her twins was Michael's, and she obsessively wrote him. And then she wanted to make a death pact with him and the child, and sent him a photograph of herself and the child and a loaded gun.
Oh my God!
And told him to kill himself at a certain time, and the three of them would be together, in eternity or whatever.
Wow!
So I was fascinated by that story, and it sounds like it disturbed Michael enough that he hung that picture of them up in his hallway of his home.
Wow,
very strange.
That is very strange.
Yeah, and so that supposedly that's where he got the idea for that song.
And then your song does what? Is it about? Are you writing about her in that moment, or writing about her afterwards?
It's her in the bardo. She's dead, and she's in this middle place, and she doesn't know it. She's still hanging on to things, and she's there with other rock stars who have, killed themselves. Or Jim Morrison's there, and Brian Jones, and they're kind of just in this place where they're not dead and they're not alive. They're just in the middle ground,
Let me ask you a question about lyric writing then, or lyrics in general. Do you think that people read too much into song lyrics, maybe your own, or do they not go deep enough into song lyrics?
I don't know. Everybody's different. I mean, some people don't listen to lyrics at all. They just sort of listen to this whole kind of the music and the sound. I don't know.
Does that bother you? Does that bother you if you've taken the time to write a song that you think is really compelling and interesting that somebody would maybe not pick up on that?
Not at all. Not at all. I want the whole experience, even if you don't even know English, to at least be, like move you emotionally. Yeah. And oftentimes people will think songs mean something that they don't, or he'll even hear different lyrics where, I like all of that. My favorite songs are always kind of riddles.
We're doing a fundraiser here called Save That Stage. We're raising money for local concert venues. There's about a good handful of clubs that are in danger of closing because they just don't have the money coming in anymore. I just wondered if you could tell me a story maybe about the first time you were on stage.
I mean, I've been playing music since I was a kid.
When did you start?
I probably, the first time I probably ever performed was when I was in like second grade. It was
Jeez.
like and it was a piano recital,
Okay.
So it wasn't something I'd written. It was
Yeah.
something I was supposed to have learned. And I learned it.
Yeah.
But when it was time to get up in front of the school, which was a small school, and play it, I choked and I just started sort of vamping on uh, the piano, just like making up my own thing. So I guess in a sense, it was my own composition in the end. And then I just sort of stopped and was kind of mortified and just ran. I was like,
But everybody clapped, right? Because you were 7, right? Everybody was still
they
standing
had
up and
to.
yay, you're
Yeah,
great.
they didn't know. They were all kids too who
Right.
couldn't play anything. So yeah.
What about when you got older and you were actually, you were making a go at becoming a band? Maybe you're in your late teens or early 20s and you get on stage and do a show. What was that like?
Yeah, I think what I remember most is just, like if you're playing with people who are good and who you've played with and it all just feels right. Yeah, there's this feeling of original participation where you kind of lose yourself
Yeah.
and everybody loses themselves and you're all kind of together.
I watched an interview with Roger Daltrey from The Who earlier this week, and he talked about when they added Keith Moon to the band. He said that he could just feel it. He said being a front man when you're on stage performing, you're looking out into the crowd. You're not watching everybody play their instruments. You're not necessarily listening to their what they're playing. But he says that you can just sort of feel when all of it was coming together, and he sort of knew this was the right configuration of The Who.
Yeah, I mean, I think at times it just depends. Like a lot of the guys at Blitzen Trappers sort of like some of them just sort of learned to play as we went along. So there were times where I would realize like, oh, we're hitting it like
Yeah.
perfectly right now. And then other times where you're like, oh, we're not quite there. So it has more to do with like specific shows, I think.
Holy Smokes, Future Jokes, the new album from Blitzen Trapper. Eric Early, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.